Have you ever driven alone at night and felt like something was watching you from the darkness? At Enigma of the Unknown, we take you to the edge of fear, one chilling story at a time. Before we begin, be sure to like this video and comment where you're watching from. Now, turn down the lights, get comfortable, and prepare for a story that will make you think twice about stopping on an empty road. I've been a long-haul truck driver for over a decade. I've seen all kinds of things. Wild animals darting across the road, eerie fog rolling over the asphalt, even the occasional weirdo wandering the highway in the dead of night. But nothing comes close to what happened to me one winter night in Colorado. I was making a late-night delivery, driving through a desolate stretch of highway deep in the mountains. The storm warnings had been all over the radio, telling people to stay off the roads due to black ice and freezing temperatures, but my job wasn't the kind where you could take a day off because of the weather. I had the heater cranked up, my thermos full of coffee, and a playlist running low in the background to keep me alert. The road ahead was mostly empty, just an occasional car or another truck passing by every hour or so. Then I saw him. At first, I thought my tired eyes were playing tricks on me. A figure standing at the side of the road, barely illuminated by my high beams. He was wearing only a thin jacket, ripped jeans, and no gloves despite the freezing cold. His arms were limp at his sides, and his head was tilted downward, like he wasn't fully aware of where he was. Something in my gut twisted. I've picked up hitchhikers before, not often, but enough to know the usual routine. This guy wasn't holding out a thumb, wasn't waving me down, he just stood there. As I got closer, I slowed down slightly. I don't even know why. Maybe some part of me thought he needed help. Then, as I passed him, I glanced at my side mirror, and my stomach dropped. He was closer. Not running, not moving, just closer. But that wasn't possible. I never saw him take a step. I felt a cold sweat break out on my neck. My hands gripped the wheel tighter. "Keep driving," I muttered to myself. "Don't stop." I pressed the gas a little harder, pushing my truck forward. The figure in my mirror faded into the darkness. I should have let it go. I should have forgotten about it, but a mile down the road, my truck suddenly died. The headlights flickered, the radio cut out, the engine gave a sputtering cough and went silent. I was left in absolute darkness. No streetlights, no cars in sight, just the whistling wind outside my cab and the heavy silence pressing down on me. I swallowed hard and reached for my flashlight, my breath coming out in shaky clouds of steam. The power failure wasn't totally unheard of in these conditions, but I had checked my truck before heading out. Everything was fine before. Then I heard it. Soft footsteps. Slow, measured, crunching on the ice, getting closer. I sat there, frozen, gripping my flashlight like a lifeline. The sound stopped just outside my driver's side window. I turned my head slowly, my pulse hammering in my ears, and there he was. The hitchhiker, standing inches from the glass, his breath fogging up the window. His face was pale and cracked, like frostbite had taken hold, his lips splitting at the corners. His eyes were dark, hollow pits, staring straight at me. Then his hand, his blackened, frozen fingers, rose up, and he tapped on the glass. Once, twice, 3 times. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. My body was locked in place, every nerve screaming for me to run, to do something. Then he tried the door handle. The lock clicked. I snapped out of my paralysis. My shaking fingers scrambled for the keys. I twisted the ignition. Nothing. He tapped on the window again. My breath hitched. "Let me in. Your truck's warm, isn't it?" His voice was low, hollow, like something that had forgotten how to speak. I twisted the key again. Harder. Come on. The engine roared to life. I didn't wait. I slammed my foot on the gas, my tires spinning against the icy road. I saw him lurch forward, his fingers scraping against the glass as my truck sped away. I didn't dare look back. I didn't stop until I reached a small truck stop on the outskirts of the next town. I sat there for a long time, hands shaking, my breath still ragged. When I finally went inside, the guy at the counter took one look at me and frowned. "You okay, man?" he asked. I swallowed. "There was someone on the road. I think he tried to get in my truck." The clerk's expression darkened. "Where'd you see him?" I hesitated. "About 10 miles back, near mile marker 217. The clerk sighed, shaking his head. "You're not the first trucker to say that," he muttered. A chill crawled up my spine. "What do you mean?" The man leaned on the counter. "Every winter, drivers report seeing a hitchhiker standing out on that road, always dressed too thin for the cold, always waiting. Some folks slow down, some don't, but the ones who pick 'em up," he lowered his voice, "they don't make it to town." I felt my stomach turn. "Who is he?" I asked. The clerk shrugged. "Some say it was a trucker who crashed in a blizzard back in the 80s. They never found his body." He looked at me dead serious. "Others say he's still looking for a ride home." I didn't sleep that night, and I never take that highway in the winter anymore, because I know he's still out there, waiting. If you're ever driving alone on an icy highway and you see a man standing at the side of the road, don't stop. Don't look back, and whatever you do, don't let him in. If you've made it this far, you know that danger on the road isn't always what you expect, but the nightmare doesn't end here. If you're enjoying these chilling winter tales, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Enigma of the Unknown for more terrifying encounters. Now, let's continue Ethan's story, and trust me, it only gets worse from here. I didn't sleep that night, even after I reached the small truck stop, even after I locked my cab and kept my headlights on. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The clerk's words haunted me. "You're not the first trucker to say that. Every winter, drivers report seeing a hitchhiker on that stretch of road. The ones who pick him up, they don't make it to town." I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I was just exhausted. Maybe the stress of driving through the storm had gotten to me. Maybe, just maybe. I imagined it all, but then I saw the handprint. I had stepped out of my truck, still wired from the adrenaline, needing a breath of fresh air. That's when I noticed it. A smudged, frozen handprint on the outside of my driver's side window. It wasn't mine. The shape was wrong, the fingers were too long, too thin, and there was something strange about it, like the ice had formed around it rather than melted from the warmth of a real hand. I felt my stomach twist. I knew, without a doubt, that I had locked my doors before leaving the truck stop, so how the hell did that handprint get there? I didn't touch it. I didn't even get back in the truck right away. Instead, I went inside and grabbed a cup of coffee, trying to calm my nerves. That's when I noticed the old man sitting at the corner booth, staring at me. He was thin, his skin weathered and lined with age, but his eyes were sharp. Too sharp for someone his age. I nodded at him politely, but he just kept watching me. After a few moments, he motioned for me to come over. I hesitated, but something in his expression told me that he knew. I sat down across from him, wrapping my hands around my coffee cup for warmth. "You saw him, didn't you?" he asked, his voice rough like gravel. I didn't answer. He nodded like he already knew. "That stretch of road, it ain't safe," he said. "Not at night. Not in winter." I swallowed hard. "Who is he?" the old man exhaled, his gaze drifting to the snow-covered parking lot outside. "They say he was a trucker, years back. Got caught in a blizzard, broke down on that road. No one stopped for him. Froze to death out there." My hands clenched. The old man's voice dropped lower. "But some folks say he never left." I felt a cold shiver crawl up my spine. Every winter, he's out there, waiting for someone to pick him up. He leaned forward. "You were smart not to stop." I nodded slowly. "But you did see him, didn't you?" I hesitated, then said, "Yeah." The old man sighed. "Then you ain't safe yet." My breath caught in my throat. "What do you mean?" He looked me dead in the eye. "He follows the ones that see him." I left the truck stop in a hurry, my heart pounding as I climbed back into my cab. The handprint was still there. I wiped it off with my sleeve, trying to ignore the unease twisting in my gut. I needed to get the hell out of this town. I fired up my engine and pulled out onto the road, watching the snowfall get heavier in my high beams. For the first few miles, everything felt normal. Then, in my side mirror, I saw him, a dark figure standing on the side of the road, barely visible through the swirling snow. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to focus on the road ahead. Just keep driving, don't stop. But as I passed him, I stole one last glance in the mirror. He was closer. I hit the gas. The next 30 miles were a blur of ice, headlights, and panic. I didn't care about the storm anymore. I just needed to put as much distance between me and him as possible. But the further I drove, the worse the radio static became. Then, through the crackling white noise, I heard something that made my blood run cold. A voice. "Your truck's warm, isn't it?" I slammed my palm against the radio, trying to shut it off. The static only got louder. "You should let me in." I grabbed my phone, desperate to call someone. Anyone. But there was no signal. Then, out of the corner of my eye, a reflection in my passenger window. I didn't turn my head. I didn't dare look. But I saw it. A shape. A shadow, sitting in the passenger seat. And then, a breath, fogging up the glass. "Let me in." I don't remember much after that. The next thing I knew, I was pulled over at a rest stop, my truck idling, my hands white-knuckling the steering wheel. The passenger seat was empty. The only sign that something had been there was the patch of frost on the inside of the window, shaped like a handprint. I stared at it, my chest rising and falling in ragged gasps. Then, without thinking, I reached up and wiped it away. A long, slow breath escaped my lips. I had made it. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over, because the next time I checked my side mirror, there was another handprint on the outside, like someone had just been there, watching, waiting. I don't take that road anymore, and if you're ever driving through the mountains in the dead of winter and you see a hitchhiker standing alone on the side of the road, keep driving, don't look back, and whatever you do, don't let him in. If you've been following these chilling winter tales, you already know that Ethan's encounter on the icy highway was just the beginning. But the nightmares of winter don't stop there. Now, let's dive into our third and final story, one that will make you think twice about staying alone on a cold, quiet night. If you're enjoying these terrifying stories, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Enigma of the Unknown for more spine-chilling encounters. I never considered myself someone who's scared easily. I'd always thought of myself as level-headed, practical, the type of person who could handle being home alone, who didn't jump at shadows. But all of that changed one cold December night in rural Montana, when I agreed to babysit for a family friend. That was the night I learned that sometimes the scariest things aren't ghosts or monsters. Sometimes it's the things standing just outside the window, watching, waiting. It started like any other babysitting gig. The parents, Mr. and Mrs. Holloway, were headed to a holiday party in town, leaving me in charge of their two kids, Liam, 8, and Sophie, 5. Their farmhouse was isolated, sitting on a large plot of land surrounded by endless snow-covered fields. The nearest neighbor was a mile away, and the long dirt road leading to the house was barely visible under the fresh snowfall. "Make yourself at home," Mrs. Holloway said as she slipped on her coat. "The kids should be asleep by 9. She hesitated, then added, "Oh, and if you hear anything outside, just ignore it. The wind plays tricks out here." I laughed. "I think I can handle a little wind." She didn't laugh back. I should have known then. By 9:30 p.m., the house was silent. Liam and Sophie had fallen asleep on the couch while watching a Christmas movie, so I carefully carried them to their rooms and tucked them in. Then I settled into the kitchen, scrolling through my phone, the soft hum of the heater the only sound breaking the stillness. That's when I first noticed the movement. Out of the corner of my eye through the large kitchen window overlooking the porch, I saw something shift in the darkness. At first I thought it was the wind moving the trees. But then, as my eyes adjusted, I realized there was a figure standing at the edge of the yard. A man. Just standing there, not moving, watching. A chill that had nothing to do with the cold ran down my spine. The figure was too far away for me to see clearly, but he was tall, wearing a dark coat, and his face was obscured by the shadows. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a neighbor walking home. Maybe it was a hunter passing through. I turned away for a second to grab my phone. When I looked back, he was closer. My breath hitched. He was now standing at the edge of the porch, just beyond the reach of the porch light. His posture was unnatural, his head tilted slightly, as if he was listening. But for what? I locked the back door immediately. Then I grabbed my phone. No signal, of course. I tried the landline, my hand shaking. Dead. The wind outside howled against the walls. The house suddenly felt too big, too empty. Then, a tap. Soft, slow, coming from the window behind me. I froze. The air felt thick, my pulse pounding in my ears. I forced myself to turn around. He was standing right outside the window. His back was still to the glass, but he was too close now, his breath fogging up the glass in slow, deliberate exhales. I staggered backward into the counter, my legs threatening to give out. What the hell was he doing? Why was he just standing there? Then, he lifted his hand, and he tapped on the glass. Once, twice, 3 times. I had never felt fear like that before. It wasn't screaming terror. It wasn't a sudden jolt of panic. It was slow, suffocating dread, creeping into my bones. I grabbed the kitchen knife, gripping it so hard my knuckles turned white. He didn't move, didn't turn around, didn't speak, just stood there, breathing against the window, tapping. I knew I had to do something. I took a slow step forward, my voice shaking. Who are you? No answer. I took another step. Are you lost? Do you need help? Nothing. Then, without warning, he turned, and I saw his face, or at least, what should have been his face. His skin was too pale, like something frozen solid. His lips cracked and raw from the cold. His eyes, God, his eyes. They were dark, sunken pits, completely void of life. His mouth parted slightly, as if he was about to speak. Then, the back door handle rattled. I nearly dropped the knife. The realization hit me like a freight train. He wasn't alone. Something, or someone else, was trying to get inside. The door handle jiggled harder now, as if being tested, like someone was checking to see if it was unlocked. A soft scrape of metal on metal. I clamped a hand over my mouth, struggling to stay silent. The kids. Oh God, the kids. I forced my legs to move, sprinting towards Sophie and Liam's rooms. I checked the windows. Locked. Checked the closets. Empty. Then I heard it. The front door creaked open. I hid in the hallway, pressing myself against the wall, my breath shallow, heart hammering. A single footstep on the wooden floor. Then another. Slow. Deliberate. I gripped the knife tighter, sweat beading on my forehead despite the freezing air. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then, a whisper. Let me in. The sound of tires crunching over snow shattered the silence. Headlights flashed through the windows as the Holloway's car pulled up. A sharp gust of wind rattled the house, and just like that, it was over. By the time Mr. Holloway stepped inside, calling my name, the house was empty. No footprints, no open doors. No sign that anyone had been there at all. But I knew what I saw. And I knew, as I looked one last time at the porch outside, that he'd be back, waiting, watching. I never babysat for the Holloways again. And every time I drive past that farmhouse, I can't help but glance at the windows. Because deep down, I know, he's still out there, waiting for someone to let him in. If there's one thing these chilling encounters remind us, it's that true horror isn't always in the things we can see. It's in the things that wait in the dark, just beyond our understanding. For Ethan, a simple decision to pass by a lone hitchhiker turned into a haunting ordeal that followed him far beyond the road. He learned that some spirits, some tragedies, never truly fade. They linger, waiting for another chance to complete unfinished business. His story teaches us that if something feels wrong, trust your instincts. Some roads aren't meant to be traveled alone, and some rides should never be offered. For Grace, what started as a quiet night of babysitting became something far more sinister. The eerie figure watching from the porch, the soft tapping on the glass, the chilling voice whispering, "Let me in," it all serves as a warning. Sometimes, the most terrifying threats aren't the ones that break in, but the ones that wait patiently for you to open the door. Her story is a stark reminder to never let your guard down, even in the safety of your own home. So what's the lesson here? Be cautious, be aware. If you ever find yourself alone on a desolate highway and see someone standing in the cold, keep driving. If you hear footsteps where no footprints should be, don't investigate. And if you ever wake up in the middle of the night to a slow, deliberate tap at your window, whatever you do, don't open the door. Thank you for watching and supporting Enigma of the Unknown. Your engagement fuels our passion for bringing you the most chilling, spine-tingling horror stories from the depths of the unknown. If you enjoyed these terrifying tales, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that will keep you up at night. Have a story of your own? Share it in the comments. We might just feature it in a future video. Stay warm, stay safe, and remember, don't look back.